I called off my wedding after my boyfriend of 6 years showed his true colors, turning 180 and torturing me 24/7. My partner and I have been together for nearly 6 years. He has honestly been the most amazing, wonderful, and supportive person in my life. He doesn't just make me happier, he makes me healthier. He's been absolutely fantastic in every way imaginable. About 2 years ago, we had the big marriage talk. We were both honest about what we wanted. He admitted that getting married made him so nervous. He has literally never seen a successful marriage. Every marriage he's ever witnessed has either ended in disastrous divorce or very sad premature death. I said I would stay with him whatever he chose, but there are some things I wouldn't do unless we were married. Just as he's seen too many marriages fail, I've seen too many loved ones be abandoned by men once the kids come along or when he finds a better option. In other words, as long as we weren't married, no kids, and our finances remained strictly untangled from each other. He proposed to me a few months after that, and since then, he's turned into an absolute nightmare. First, he refuses to do anything wedding-related, but accuses me of taking over and being a bridezilla when I make decisions without him. He does things behind my back, like inviting our friend who has 4 kids to bring the children when we agreed the only exception to the no kids rule would be my niece who will be 3 months old, and for obvious reasons can't be separated from my sister for the weekend. I can swallow that frustration, but he's also become hypercritical. Any mess around the house, even if he made it, if I haven't cleaned it up by the time he gets home, he refuses to talk to me. I work from home, so I usually do a lot of the chores, like the dishwasher, during my lunch break, but sometimes I don't have time. This is a busy time of year, and while my job is usually constrained to 9-5, in the last few weeks I've had to work until 8 or 9. When he stormed in last night angry that he had to clean the kitchen, and I pointed out I'd been working for 12 hours straight, he looked me in the eyes and said so. He's threatened to throw me out of the house and call off the engagement 4 times. He's stopped initiating sex. I've come to dread the sound of the door unlocking because he can't go 5 minutes without finding a problem to have with me. It's so bad that my mother, who was ready to adopt him a year ago, is refusing to be the witness that signs our marriage certificate. I've asked to call off the wedding and go back to being just girlfriend and boyfriend. But he says he really does want to get married, and he's just doing all of this to make sure he's making the right choice. Increasingly, though, all he's done is convince me I'm making the wrong one. Edit to add. If it wasn't clear, I'd already decided not to marry him when I made this post. I'm packing up and going to my mom's for now. I'm safe and don't need anyone to call the cops. Thanks to the person who offered, though. Relevant comments and OP's response to them. Shame the devil. He's abusive. He was always going to be abusive once he felt he'd locked you down. This is who he is. You can't stay with him because of who he used to be. He isn't that person anymore. He will likely never be that person again. OP. It's really hard to believe he was trying to lock me down. If anything, I had to kind of convince him to propose. But yeah, I'm not planning to marry this man anymore. Musjo 1. Wow, it's like he is punishing you for putting him in a position to have to marry you, because otherwise he wouldn't get certain things he wants. If not consciously, then subconsciously he really doesn't want to be with you long term. And the purpose of his behavior is to make you leave him. I wonder, how is it possible that he was perfect for the whole 6 years? There's just no way he was. OP. I mean, no one is perfect. But he was really someone I wanted to spend my life with. He used to make me feel so safe and warm. He used to do things like when we stayed in hotels, he'd always take the side of the bed nearest the door, and he'd come with me on my old morning commute because he knew I don't like taking trains, even though it added 30 minutes to his commute. He makes me laugh like no tomorrow. He once sent me to the doctor after I laughed so hard I pulled a muscle. He's smart and really quick-witted. I've never laughed like I do with him. He'd do little things like coming home with a teddy bear just because it reminded him of the teddy my grandpa gave my mom when she was a kid that he saw once in a photo. And he'd do big things like spending months painstakingly teaching me how to drive. And it was painful, or driving 8 hours across the country and spending 3 days in quarantine just to see me at Christmas when I had to temporarily move in with my grandpa during COVID. When I changed medications and gained an alarming amount of weight, he woke up an hour before he needed to and worked out with me every morning for a year. I always struggled with the cold shoulder during arguments, which he always told me was him cooling off, so the argument didn't escalate. But we had so few, and they'd last maybe a couple hours. Lately, he can go 3 days only saying single-word responses to me. Calligrapher Way 101. Do you think he wants to marry because you said you won't combine finances until then? OP, I don't think so. I have thought a lot about that. At the time he proposed, we knew his grandma was going to pass away soon. We were renting the house next door to her. And while we knew he'd inherit the house we were living in, the two houses had slowly merged gardens in the 10 years he and his grandma had been living next to each other. The two houses have been in the family since the 30s. So he was quite keen on buying next door to both avoid losing it. The family member who inherited it couldn't afford to keep it. And also because having a stranger live, there would have been a huge privacy issue for both houses. We'd hoped to rent it to a friend or another family member. He does earn a lot more than me, but he's self-employed, so the banks are quite wary of lending to him. I work at a university, which the banks consider a safe professional job. So getting credit and loans would have been much easier if he'd been married to me. Thinking back on it, I wonder if he asked me not because it was something he wanted per se, but just something that made sense. We'd been together for a while, so it made sense to keep moving forward. It made financial sense, and his family liked me. I'm not a perfect partner or person, but weighing it all up, marrying me had lots of factual advantages for him. I even have dual American citizenship, and he'd always dreamed of moving to America one day. Update. Sorry for the wait, folks. I've had a lot to do. This has honestly been one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I'm back in with my parents, which is awful. I hate it. I feel like a teenager again. They're being very supportive, and I'm grateful I had somewhere to go. But the house is so damn loud, and I forgot what it was like. I'm trying to find an affordable apartment, but it's London, so that feels like a bit of a pipe dream. To top it all off, canceling a wedding a month before is expensive. Only the celebrant and the photographer have accepted refunds. Every other vendor has been paid in full, and that's money just flushed down the toilet. It's been exhausting. Before this, I was in a pretty great financial situation. I had savings, a plan, a house, and a financially stable partner. Now I have less than 1/10 of my savings, nowhere to live, and no real prospect for the future. It's not easy processing losing him, not easy at all. I'm still in the part where everything makes me cry, and you feel like someone has taken scissors to your soul. But I've experienced both grief and breakups. I know this feeling will eventually fade, even if it might never completely disappear. When it's mixed in with a relief of being able to exist without criticism every 5 minutes, I'm hopeful it will pass sooner rather than later. But I have no experience for this kind of existential fear of being alone. Not having the family I've wanted for so long, not knowing what's next, actually trying to date someone. When I was little, I never knew what I wanted from my career other than that I had one. But I always knew I wanted to be a mom. That dream feels like it's getting further and further away every day. I have no experience with this burning embarrassment of telling everyone in your life that the wedding they were invited to isn't happening. It was so painful telling his niece and nephew I wasn't going to be seeing them again. They cried and clung to me and begged me not to go, and they ripped my heart out. It's easy on Reddit to tell someone to end things, but when you've built a life together, disentangling it is so bloody difficult. A divorce would be easier because then we'd have a legal framework for all of this. Instead, I have to decide if I want to take him to court for the custody of my cat, when I don't have a proper place to house her, but she's my cat. You might have noticed I've avoided really talking about my ex. We're communicating through our parents. He tried to reach out several times, but if I talk to him, I know I will do what I always do. I will buckle and take him back because I love him very much. I've been in therapy again, courtesy of my parents, and my therapist has to keep reminding me to love myself more than I love him. I miss him anyway. He's promised to change, promised couples counseling, and promised he knows he was wrong. But he also hasn't said the word sorry yet. Such a small word, and yet so telling. He's been generally pretty accommodating to me. Expenses have been split 50-50ths, which is fair but certainly a worse deal for me. He left the house so I could gather my things in peace. I can tell from the state of it, this has hit him hard. The cats have been the only sticking point, and I understand why. The house is old and creaks. Being there alone isn't fun. Neither of us liked it when we were alone, and a large part of the reason we got cats was for the company at night, when the other was away. I'm sorry if this wasn't the update you wanted to hear. My mind is all over the place. More relevant comments and OP's response to them. Special_Lychee_6847. If the wedding date hasn't passed yet, and you can get your reservations back, just try to offer it to someone else. Even if you offer it for half the price you paid, you'd still be getting some of your money back. You never know if someone is looking for a venue, catering, etc. on short notice. Doesn't even have to be for a wedding. Someone could be having a renewal of vows, a 50-year anniversary, celebrating their retirement, christening, whatever. Anyone wanting to have a celebration on short notice could potentially reimburse your money for you. Post in local Facebook groups, church, wherever people that could want to buy your party can find it. However down you're feeling now, it's still better than being trapped in a marriage that's not healthy. OP, unfortunately not. Since COVID, wedding venues and vendors are aware of that and word their contracts to make sure resale is not possible, so they can sell their services at half price in addition to keeping the original payment.